Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of Sewing Adventure. Have you ever taken one of your drab old t-shirts that actually also have like a stain on them and thought, you know what, my dear friend, you're destined for something greater. So today you're going to witness and you're going to see how easy it actually is to create a stunning corset out of a drab old humble t-shirt. But I'm not just going to make any old type of corset, no. I'm going to make the most amazing, coolest piece of clothing ever created in the history of fashion. I'm talking, of course, about a Vivienne Westwood corset. I did an internship at the Vivienne Westwood Studio back in 2013. And I have the t-shirt to prove it. It says Dame. As you might know, Dame Westwood, she passed away last year, which was a terrible, terrible tragedy for the fashion world in my opinion, and yeah, it's just really sad news. And we really lost a true icon, a real rebel, and one of the most inspiring designers that we had. So with this video, I don't know, maybe we can share some of the legacy and bring some of this punky vibe back. And of course, I cannot tell you all the secrets because I don't want to get in legal trouble for making this video. Also, I cannot give you like the proprietary patterns or anything like that because honestly, I don't have them myself, so I had to recreate one pattern for myself. And I'm not going to show you the pattern creation process, but if you're interested in it, I am more than happy to make a video on how I made it with my measurements and how you can make one too. Obviously, you're going to need a t-shirt. I chose this one because it has something cool on the front and it's kind of oversized, so the bigger your t-shirt, the better. Of course, t-shirt fabric is not the perfect corset making outer fabric. We're going to make it a bit stiffer with interfacing, but I just like that you can take any cool kind of slogan, any kind of band shirt, or just any shirt that you like that has something cool on it, put it on the front panel, front and center of your corset, and of course you can also buy the fabrics. Like 1 meter is probably more than enough. Corsets really don't take that much of fabric. But the magic is actually not in the outer fabric, but in the inner construction. You're going to need some canvas-like fabric. The stiffer, the better. So this is not even stiff enough, but this is good enough for us right now. Then we're going to need the mesh. And this is actually a piece of mesh that I saved from the bin back in the studio, so I have some kind of reference. I have only found this poor replica. You see, it's much more soft and flowy, and this is much stiffer. I'm going to use this one for this project, it's fine. But yeah, if you get to find some kind of better mesh, go for it. You can use something like a stretchy swimwear fabric, for example. That's totally cool too, as long as it's nice and stretchy. And the last piece I want to show you is the boning, and I think you guys know this one already. It's like super simple sew on boning. It's not this fancy spiral boning or anything like that, or this Rigeline boning. This is what they actually use in the studio. They just sew it right on. This is good enough for the Westwood Studio, then for sure it's good enough for us. So let's use this one. The pattern pieces. And the whole corset is basically made out of just 5 pieces. So the front looks something like this. A lot of holes, and the holes indicate where the boning is going to go on the piece. Same with the back, also with the holes, beneath the holes. Yeah, the side piece looks something like this. It looks a bit funky, I admit it, but it basically connects with the front, like up here, and then it connects in the back with the back part, like this. And you see the gap? The gap is where actually the strap is going to go. So these are the pieces you're going to need, and now it's time to cut them out, right? I think what I'm going to do is kind of try to make it go something like this. Yeah, it's not entirely in the center, but I think I have to make do with that. So we just mark it out. Let me tell you how I got into the studio and how I got that internship. And yeah, it was coincidence and a little bit of audacity from my side. Before I even started studying, I met this super ultra cool girl who was a tailor, and she had the coolest Vivienne Westwood coffee mug, and turns out she actually worked there. And years later, I just decided to call her up and ask her if she could connect me to the people, because I was looking for an internship. And it was surprisingly easy. And turns out they look for interns all the time, especially around the big shows. And yes, that's how I got in. It was actually quite simple. I don't know if they still do it this way, but that was my experience. Okay, back to the video. Now that we cut almost all the pieces, it's time to put those holes to use. These are holes that I drilled through the pattern, and they're important markings to see where the boning is going to go. I'm going to put these marks onto the front and back on this canvas part. Now we have all the parts that we need. Additionally, we're also going to need a zipper and also some bias tape. What now is going to happen is the basting part. I just like to baste those pieces together so they stay nice. The basting part really does take a while, but it's really important to do because you will be working with several layers and you really don't want those to shift around. And yeah, while I basted the front, the back and the side pieces, the evening basically went by. But that's okay, you know? Hello, my dear friends. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the whole process, is putting all the boning onto the corsage and really see it kind of take the shape and kind of come together nicely. So this is a cool way to start the project. And then I just kind of shape it slightly to go in this rounded curve, and then I just hold it. What makes the Vivienne Westwood corset so iconic? Glad you asked. It's not just a garment, it was and still is a groundbreaking statement piece. This historic piece of clothing, the corset, was completely reimagined through Westwood and became a tool of self-expression and liberated femininity. And yeah, it used to be a symbol for oppression. And I mean, how audacious is it to wear underwear as outerwear? Vivienne did it first. Alright, first one is in. A lot more to go. Alright, so this is the second part of the prep work, and actually I really love this part because this is where you actually see it turning into a corsage, and it's kind of a magical thing. But yeah, as I said before, you need patience. A lot of it. And the second one. And this part always takes longer than initially anticipated. But it's okay. This is where the magic happens, and you have to take your time. You have to also see the vision, and most importantly, you need to really celebrate the small wins. All right. The front is done! Yay! Okay, now on to the back. Moving on to the back pieces, these need to be boned as well. But this is a much easier and faster process than the fronts because you don't have to deal with that much curvature in the bones anymore. Now it's time to install the zipper. It is the third day. I'm still wearing the same t-shirt because I'm committed to consistency. First of all, I want to make installing the zipper as easy as possible. and that's why it's a good idea to prepare the edge with ironing it over. If the zipper looks kind of old to you, that's because it is pretty old. I sourced it from a garment we were about to throw away, and I was waiting for a mere decade until I finally decided to put it to use. And the zipper is installed in several parts. First off, we just sew it in, pretty straightforward. But then we cover up the seam allowance and the zipper with a piece of boning. This way the seam allowance is nicely encased and finished, and it also gives some additional structure as well. First, we sew the boning from the wrong outer side, and then we attach the inner side from the right side, sewing right inside of the first zipper seam. Now we have to connect the front with the side part. So here two curves need to go into each other, and this is where putting in 2 or 3 notches in the pattern creation process really comes in handy. And we interns used to cut the corsages, and the sewing specialists got really frustrated whenever we forgot to mark the notches. And yeah, now I understand why, definitely. Alright friends, now that we have the side seams finished and the side parts sewn onto the corsage part, we actually have to clean up the side seam. That means we have to clip it, we have to press it inside, and what I also like to do, just to keep it safe and secure where it needs to stay, I also am going to do a little whip stitch to keep this one in place. Now that we have those side parts fixed, doesn't have to look nice, it just has to hold it in place. But we're going to cover it up now with some of the boning. And okay, now I'm going to actually flip it around. So I'm going to sew from the top and from the right side. And basically what I'm going to do is just stay on the edge of the seam. Hey friends, it's been a while since I continued working on this project. But here we are back again at it, and yeah, it's time basically to put all of those pieces that we still have just flapping around. It's time to put those together into one beautiful corsage. First order of business, get those straps connected with the main corsage part. Hey. And also do the same with the facing. And then those seam allowances need to go up into the strap out of the way, and this is of course accomplished with our little friend, the mini iron. Okay, now that we have our straps ready, it's time for a pretty important step actually, sewing the neckline. So you see, there's a very specific order you have to stick to for this project, because some pieces that are part of the construction are also used to finish the garment at the same time. It's time to do the straps. The straps were cut with the seam allowance, while the underarm was left without it. That's intentional. Next up, we flip the straps, which should be relatively easy since they're quite wide and also still open on one side, but as you can see, I somehow struggled with that one. Eventually they were flipped, and again, the iron is really your best friend to make them look nice and pretty. And this is also a great time to give the neckline a press as well. So here again we finish and bring structure at the same time. The facing edge is covered by the second piece of boning that runs right across the chest. But before I stitch it, I will secure it again with a quick round of hand-sewn whip stitches. And now we can confidently put it all under the machine and create the last piece of boning in our front corsage. Right, so now it's time to deal with the underarm seams, which are still raw, and these are encased with some regular bias tape you can buy in a store, or if you want a perfectly matching result with your corsage, you can of course cut them yourself. I cut back one side of the seam allowance on the bias tape to around 1/2 centimeter, and then I sew it in the pre-made crease. This allows me to do is to create a bigger overlap to ensure the tape will be caught when I stitch it from the other side, and then of course it's flipped and stitched in the ditch from the right side. So what's left now to do is just connect the back piece to the rest, and then we have a corsage. Here again we simply encase the raw upper edge of the back pieces with some bias tape. Same procedure as also on the underarm seam. First we have to connect the back straps. So this one is a bit tricky because the strap is already flipped, so you have to basically insert the back piece into the tube and then flip it out and pull it open again. It's difficult to explain. If you're attempting to do this corsage, I can show you again in more detail. Just write to me in the comments or something. So now we have the strap finally connected to our bodice on the back. So now, finally, it's time to connect the back pieces. Yeah, so the side part is part strap, so you have a bit of an opening where the strap is flipped. This is not a problem though, we can only attach the length of the back piece and close the gap by hand later on. And again, this might be a bit tricky to explain, but it's really pretty much self-explanatory when you have the pieces in your hands. Believe it or not, the corsage is almost done. Only some really small steps to finish this whole thing up. First, the back of the strap is attached with some little hand stitches. And also the back side seam needs to be whip stitched so it doesn't fray. Alright, so all that's left to do now is basically just do the bottom part. And now for the very last part, you just have to finish up the hem of the corsage. And this is again done with a simple bias tape. So just sew it, flip it around, stitch in a ditch, you know the drill. That's the process of creating a pretty damn close replica of basically the coolest piece of clothing in the world. I just wanted to demystify the process. It's still possible to create a really high-end garment at home with your home sewing machine. It's all possible. You just have to take the time and be patient with yourself. If you feel like, yeah, I want the same corsage and I want to do it too, I can totally also make a video where I explain how this pattern came to be. Like, happy to help. I'm happy to show you how to make your own Vivienne Westwood corsage pattern, and then you can make as many of those as you like. If you want more of those kind of fun designer recreation projects, hit me up in the comments, let me know what you want to see, and I'll see what I can do. And yeah, thank you so much for joining this sewing adventure with me, and yeah, I see you next time. Bye bye.